From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Interesting headline from Pew Research recently. More Americans now say they prefer a community with big houses even if local amenities are farther away. What? Vianney Gomez of the Pew Research Center writes, Americans today are more likely than they were in the fall of 2019 to express a preference for living in a community where houses are larger and farther apart, but schools, stores, and restaurants are several miles away, according to a Pew Research Center survey. There has been a corresponding drop in the share saying they would prefer to live somewhere with smaller houses that are closer to each other, but schools, stores, and restaurants are within walking distance. Today, 6 in 10 U.S. adults say they would prefer to live in a community with larger homes with greater distances to retail stores and schools. That's up 7 percentage points since 2019. While 39% say they prefer a community with smaller houses that are closer together with schools, stores, and restaurants within walking distance. That's down 8 points. Preferences for communities where houses are larger and farther from retail shops, dining, and schools has increased across partisan, age, educational, and racial and ethnic groups. Yeah, I'm looking at the charts here that they've provided with this article. It's an equal and steady climb for Republicans, Democrats, and independents. White, black, Hispanic, age groups. This is shocking to me. You know it's impossible, right? We can't have large houses. Well, we can, but not everybody can. This completely relies on privilege. Large houses with lots of space, you have to drive to stores and to school. This is exactly the future we can't afford. I mean, do we have no understanding of the social isolation, of the income gap? And that's not to say anything of the massive amounts of energy it takes to have large houses, to have lots of space, to have all of the amenities, your doctors and your schools and your stores. You have no choice. You have to get into a car. This is an urban designer's nightmare. I challenge you to go find any opinion piece of architects, designers, planners, those who tell us what the optimal design is for the human-built landscape. The fact that so many Americans want this and somehow live in a fantasy that they could have it. And I suppose it's not a fantasy. Some people can have it. But at the cost of those who can't, because, I mean, it's physically and economically and morally, it's in every way impossible for all of us to live like this. Even for the ones who want to live like this, it's too many. It's a death sentence regarding climate change, regarding any sense of community. We want to get them going bigger houses and open up that automatic garage door and drive in? Yeah, I'm amazed at these findings. I thought better of us. I thought Americans, I'm always giving you guys the benefit of the doubt, Americans. I'm always assuming that the good guys outnumber the bad guys. And I'm always assuming that given the right information, you're going to understand the direction we need to go. This is exactly the opposite direction. Americans with a college degree, particularly those with postgraduate degrees, are less likely than those with less formal education to express a preference for communities with larger houses that are farther apart. More than 6 in 10 of those with some college experience or less education, 64%, say they prefer living in communities that are more spread out, compared with 56% of those with a bachelor's degree and 49% of those with a postgraduate degree. So, The more education you have, the least likely you are to share this opinion. I am always a proponent for more education for everybody. I think it's just a good thing. It's a good thing for your personal life, and it's a very good thing for our collective lives. If more of us understand the simple facts of things, why do you suppose those with the most education prefer smaller housing units, closer together, walking distance to retail, schools, leisure? 8 in 10 rural Republicans, 83%, say they prefer more spread out communities. A narrower but still majority of rural Democrats, 60%, say the same. Among those who live in urban communities, 63% of Republicans say they would prefer to live somewhere where homes are large, far apart, and require driving to other parts of the community. A smaller share, but still 42% of Democrats express this preference. Too many. This is not a matter of personal opinion. Personal opinion is you like tennis and I like golf. You know, I think we should paint the room blue. You think we should paint it yellow. Those are personal preferences. These are hard, cold facts. If we do one, we've got one kind of world. If we have big houses far apart, we have one kind of world, a world of more environmental degradation. And if we have housing units smaller and closer together and walking distance to the amenities, that's a world that's easier on the environment. It's a world that promotes unity. It reduces isolation. Yeah, go find me any planner, any researcher, any expert in the human infrastructure who thinks this is a good idea. I challenge you. You're not going to find one. Not one. Find me one environmentalist, one climate scientist, the energy, the transportation. Find me one psychologist, sociologist who thinks it's a good idea for the human psyche for us to be in big houses separated from each other. This is crazy. How can so many people believe something so wrong? The humans. What are we going to do with the humans? Let's look at something else here. I mentioned several episodes ago that I was pretty suspicious, pretty wary about the Van Gogh exhibits running around the country. The so-called Beyond Van Gogh. And you've probably heard of it. You've probably seen pictures in your social feed, ads, or maybe some of your friends have gone to it. Maybe you've gone to it. There's one here in Milwaukee. I'm not sure if it's still here. It's this big sort of immersive exhibit where Van Gogh paintings are projected onto massive walls and all 4 walls and the ceiling. I mean, you walk in, you're totally immersed, and the paintings are moving. You're in this supposedly immersive experience. And everybody's just going nuts about it. And I'm in this sort of weird position. I find myself, it happens with movies and television shows all the time. I criticize them without having seen them. So I put that out front, I confess. But I'm not going to shell out the money, and I'm not going to pay for streaming services to see everything I critique. I've read reams and reams about it. It's everywhere. Well, I was pretty suspicious. I thought, this looks really stupid. This looks like it's something designed for people who know nothing about art to somehow feel like they do. I don't know. It just looked dumb. And I saw video and I saw pictures, and I thought, this looks really stupid. If you want to have any appreciation for Van Gogh, go to a museum and find one of his paintings and just stand in front of it for a while. I guarantee you'll be moved. If you want to understand anything about Van Gogh, read about him. Get a book. Look at the paintings, look at pictures of the paintings, read his words, especially his letters to his brother Theo. They're collected in a wonderful book called Dear Theo that I highly recommend. I've recommended before, I'll recommend again. One of the greatest books I've ever read, one of my all-time favorite books, Dear Theo, The Letters of Vincent van Gogh. He was, in so many ways, just a brilliant and special person who walked this earth for a while. And if you want to be moved by Van Gogh and his work, you don't have to go to one of these freak shows. It's exploitive. It's cheap. It's dumb. It's hacky. It's touristy. It's kitsch. It's art without being art. It exploits the beauty and the wonder of Van Gogh to create some sort of weird spectacle and make a bunch of money. It just looks stupid. Well, again, I haven't seen it, but I'm just so certain I don't have to see it. I'm going to read something to you right now from a friend of mine who did see it. His name is David. I certainly do not wish to spoil the experience for anyone else. I went to the Beyond Van Gogh thing in Milwaukee, and I was so underwhelmed and disappointed I almost cut my own ear off. There were 3 rooms. The first room, the educational room, was not very educational. You walked by some switch-backed walls of slides with English-translated sentences from letters exchanged between Vincent and Theo, all the while with eerie New Age music piped in the background. Each quote was very brief and not especially illuminating. It would not have been hard to spend another 15 minutes to select some more informative excerpts. The second room, I don't know what to call it or what it had to do with Van Gogh or his art. Back in the late 60s, there was a place on St. Mark's Place in Greenwich Village called the Electric Circus. It had a large gymnasium-sized room with psychedelic projections on the walls and music and flashing lights. The second room was kind of like that, only the Electric Circus people had better drugs and imaginations. The third and largest room had massive projections of Van Gogh paintings and parts of paintings on the walls with wobbly animations. The portraits blinked, the gulls flapped, the stars went from dim to bright as the motifs of the paintings morphed to strains of Don McLean and Paul Simon in a 37-minute loop. Yeah, Don McLean wrote a wonderful song called Vincent. This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. It's a beautiful song. All right, so I guess they're using that. And Paul Simon, I'm not sure what song they're talking about there. All right. Maybe I am spoiled by my visits to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, but I can't tell if this thing is beyond Van Gogh or if it just missed by a mile. Is it presumptuous of me to say that Vincent would have hated it? All right, I've looked to see if I can find another one. This one's from, where am I looking at? Texas Monthly. Headline, No Go. Beyond Van Gogh exhibit is a very expensive screensaver. Okay. Let me give credit here. Let's use Michael Agresta. My immersive journey into the mind and work of Vincent van Gogh began with a 20-minute drive to the Circuit of the Americas, the motor sports racetrack outside of Austin. In the paved, arid expanse, absent any landscape or human figure that might have compelled Van Gogh to pick up a paintbrush, I drove past 5 empty parking lots and into a 6th. There, a nondescript warehouse beckoned with a playful sign reading, "Go this way, G-O-G-H, ha-ha." I spent 10 minutes winding past screens of text explaining in hieroglyphic terms the life of the Dutch post-impressionist painter. I was instructed that despite his suicide in 1890 at age 37, shortly after lopping off his own ear and offering it as a gift to a brothel maid, Van Gogh's work radiates joy and celebrates life, and that to experience his work is to open oneself to immense joy. Steeled for delight, I reached the portal. My magic school bus ticket was stamped. It was time to go inside the paintings. Beyond Van Gogh is one of a half-dozen independent productions of Van Gogh-inspired wall and floor projection shows appearing across the country. National arts reporters have struggled to distinguish the various shows on offer, which are the handiwork of different animators and composers, and to assess claims of being the original Van Gogh immersion. Yeah, I was a little confused about this too. Apparently there are several different outfits here. A Montreal-based Beyond Van Gogh designer said of his approach, "We wanted to go beyond the frame and step inside his world, inside his paintings." A competitor series, Immersive Van Gogh, will roll out similar experiences in other cities. One critic recently compared these shows to wall-size screensavers, and the same thought occurred to me as I immersed myself in the spectacle. Pulsing animated stars populate the walls, black and white sketches fill in with color, and viewers of a certain age will feel an instinct to nudge a mouse and get back to Windows 95. Beyond Van Gogh belongs squarely in the category of a boardwalk or tourist-centered diversion. It merits consideration for dates and family outings alongside escape rooms, wax museums, and fun houses. Speaking of, there are distorting mirrors at the entrance of Beyond Van Gogh that transform the visitor's body into the swirling forms of late haunted canvases like Starry Night, a cute trick. What immense joy can be found in Beyond Van Gogh is accessible mostly to children and those in pursuit of their next great Instagram backdrop. My cold, elitist heart was mostly impregnable throughout the 45-minute show, but it did melt a bit to see kids chasing digital almond blossoms across the floor and gazing in wonder as the whole room shifted to a pale blue. I also noticed more than one date that seemed to be going well, many successful photos snapped, and one or two journeyers inside the paintings whose trips might have been psychotropically enhanced. The argument for giving Beyond Van Gogh a shot goes like this. Museums in a minor art city are unlikely to land a traveling exhibition of priceless Van Gogh canvases anytime soon. So what's the harm of encountering his work in an Epcot-style sideshow for those of us who can't travel to New York or Amsterdam to look at the real thing? Isn't it a bit like watching a documentary? The argument against is that it's a bad documentary. Beyond Van Gogh sentimentalizes Van Gogh beyond recognition. The real Van Gogh's most salient quality was not purity or poetic martyrdom, but a dangerous, all-consuming emotional intensity that manifested itself in religious fervor, unrequited romantic aggression, self-harm, and, yes, fantastically beautiful paintings. In his 1985 essay, The Production of the World, the British art critic John Berger described being stuck in a postmodern sense of unreality, where he could no longer hold meaning together, and then visiting the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam and being cured by his malaise. Berger praises Van Gogh as an artist concerned above all with perceiving and communicating reality through paint. When he paints a chair, Van Gogh seems to join the pieces together himself. His paintings imitate the active existence, the labor of being, of what they depict, Berger writes. He takes us as close as any man can, while remaining intact, to that permanent process by which reality is being produced. Beyond Van Gogh and its ilk labor in the opposite direction, toward cheap illusion, toward false commodification of a real, complex man and his art, and toward a divided and distracted style of attention, ruled by technology, where we find ourselves finally inhabiting a picture of a picture of a picture. That's Michael Agresto of Texas Monthly. So there you go. Take what you will. I ain't going. They're not getting my $50. I sniffed this thing out real early as something that I would just despise. And please don't just put this down to taste. Well, you like this and I like that. It's just an opinion. No. It's the reason we have art critics. I value critics. Music, art, culture, some of it takes us to places we really need to go. Places that will help us as individuals and as a collective. Other things are cheap and exploitive and just there to titillate and entertain and just there to make money. And if you go, and even if you like it, it's not going to kill you. but this steady drip, drip, drip of cultural exploitation, of commodification, as the writer puts it, of art and beauty. Yeah, I'm not going to just write this off as one person's opinion. No, I'm not. I think it matters. It matters over time. It matters to the culture. So, boo. Boo on the Van Gogh exhibits, to these various Van Gogh projection shows. Lights and lasers and animation and music. Nah. Don't do it. Well, I don't want to sound like too much of a curmudgeon here. I guess I should say, just by way of a reminder, I love a good critique, either way, good or bad. You know, I confess, it's kind of fun reading a bad review of a movie or a book or a play or an art exhibit. There's something kind of weirdly pleasing about somebody being put in their place. I'm a fan of critics. I know artists don't like critics. I think they play a really important role. But I don't want to end on a snarky note. There are also plenty of reviews that rave about artistic pursuits. And they bring attention to real quality. And they just add another layer to the beauty provided by the painter or the dancer or the actor or the writer. Give us some insight into what the artist is accomplishing. Kind of broadens and deepens our appreciation. And there's so much. There's so much wonderful art, music, culture. It's practically immeasurable. So I'm very happy to find things that I like. And I'm very happy to read positive reviews. So don't get the idea that I just traffic in these snarky negative reviews. Yeah, they can be kind of fun, I confess. But that's not me, I promise. And the two things go hand in hand. I mean, that's why I have such a disdain for so-called art that exploits, that commodifies, that imitates. I wouldn't be so upset about it if not for the fact that it cheapens the world of art and culture. When it dulls the senses of so many people who are no longer able to know the difference. Some might think I'm being elitist, but I don't think so at all. I think that education is sorely lacking in giving young people an ability to discern quality, to not know the difference between good art and bad art. And yes, there is good art and there is bad art. Yes, there is. Your 5-year-old kid's crayon drawing posted with a magnet on the refrigerator might very well be beautiful, excellent art. I'm guessing it probably is. Because there's a natural freedom that's represented in a child's work of art. I'm a great fan of children's art. But when you're all grown up and you're making your living and making your money, and you're serving up paintings that look good over a couch, yeah, I think we should be able to tell the difference between that and an actual artist who somehow had the good fortune or has worked very hard to retain the child's ability to feel and to communicate. The artist who works equally as hard on the craft as they do their purpose, their inner purpose. In every field, in every aspect of art and culture, there are practitioners who deserve to be recognized as excellent, as great. And there are those who deserve to be exposed as charlatans. And that's what critics do. And that's what we all should be able to do if we were able to do it. But so many of us, too many of us, are unable, are willing to just completely turn our backs on that part of our nature. I like what I like. I don't know art, but I like what I like. To have almost a disdain for anyone who tries to draw these distinctions. Yeah, there's good music and there's bad music. There's good art and there's bad art. And a lot of it has to do with the intent of the artist. If a filmmaker knows how to push your emotional buttons, well, I suppose that's a particular skill. And if they just want to make popcorn movies to make you jump out of your seat, I suppose there's nothing wrong with that. But there are also great filmmakers and great films that reach the level of art. And while no one, certainly not myself, no one can give a definitive explanation as to exactly what art is and what its intent is, I can say this much. It has to be done. There's some doing to it. Someone has to create it. And let's assume for a moment that it requires an audience. You could have that debate in the art world too. Does art require an audience? Let's, for the sake of this conversation, assume that it does. Well, then there has to be a recipient. There has to be some exchange. The artist brings something into the world that wasn't there before they brought it into the world. And they bring it to an audience that gets something from it. I mean, these are the bare necessities of art. And even acknowledging the wide range that may encompass, far beyond what I could understand, let alone explain. But when an artist fails to achieve what they've set out to achieve, or if they succeed and their only goal is to exploit, is to profit, then it's the job of critics to point that out. And it's the job of each one of us to try to have some understanding. And it's the job of educators, it's the job of society as a whole to bring some critical thinking into education. And it's the job of all of us to continue a lifelong learning, a lifelong awareness, especially in a world where we are bombarded by so-called art and images and a din of, for lack of a better word, music. No one person can definitively say, yeah, that's junk, and yeah, that's great. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not saying that. But the role of a critic is important, and each one of us has a responsibility both to themselves and to our fellow humans on the planet to give this its due, to not just set it aside as a frill of life. It's the very essence of our lives. And we should appreciate it. And we should try to understand it. And if you're thrilled by some carnival sideshow, okay, fine. But know what it is. Have some awareness of how you're being exploited. And if you want to engage in that, a carnival freak show, I suppose, could be a lot of fun. Just know the difference. Know what you're being sold and know what you're buying. Try to have some understanding of what you're experiencing. That's all. That's all I'm asking. All right. Well, go get 'em. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.